you for this thoughtful talk, which continues in some way what we started yesterday, but also continues a discussion we had in the school mostly in June with Chantal Ackermann,
yes,
with Claude Lanzmann.
yes.
The question exactly nicht sehr can the shower be pictured, be shown in a way, and that was on the aesthetic level, aesthetic ethical level, you know, to politicize it, to use it in a political discourse is even, I think, more offensive to the filmmaker of June than it was Schindler's List in their view. Still, on the other hand, that's the world we are living in. That's how they do it. And so the question is how to react to it, what to do with it. So, it's up to us to find this, and even if we try to stay away from this, we cannot. We are in it. So let's do it. Yes. Professors first. James, that's our rule here.
So I didn't want to be the first, but okay. I don't like to use phrases, and I hate so much for what I will say now, but I was deeply moved by what you said. I know it goes against my cynical, obscene attitude,
sorry
but
that you were undone in that way.
yeah, okay. Just a couple of remarks. I will try to be very brief because I have many remarks, but I will be brief. First, when you mention Said, Moses, and so on, one thing nonetheless to confirm us into that line of analysis. Do you know, or you probably do others, do you know that an ironic fact, which I read somewhere, I don't think Said reports on it, that when Moses, Freud's late work, was published in 38, at least that version, you know that how it was received in the Middle East, among the settlers in Tel Aviv and so on, with ironic positive detachment, interesting hypotheses and so on. The most violent reaction came from Muslim intellectuals in Alexandria, who immediately offered, in spite of the tensions, their helping hand to Jewish fundamentalists. That's abomination, because for them it was also a sacred book. So I found this a wonderful confirmation that there it was more. Another thing which deeply touched me is how you refer to that, how should I put it, the manipulations with Jewish emigrations to Palestine. But do you know, this really deeply also moved me when I read a book on history on SS, where I learned a terrifying fact, which for me is not a fact to avoid any misunderstanding. In any way against the Jews, I would have done in that situation exactly the same, but a fact against which draws attention to this ambiguous European complicity, anti-Semitic, with the establishment of the State of Israel. Do you know that Eichmann in 38, I have in my book, took a train to go to Palestine to meet Israeli representatives. Then, because of a strike, they have to meet in Alexandria, where they did conclude a deal to facilitate and even to allow them, Jews who want to emigrate for Germany, to take some money on condition that they go to Palestine. So, this is pretty horrifying thing. If you just allow me a couple of more points, when you mentioned, I think it would be also, it's very productive to use this almost cheap term, to refer Levi to that with which you started. How, narrative, how you always, it's not only that you confess there is an addressee, no? I mean, to sell with Lacan, the big other is always here, you may not agree with it. What I'm saying is that what again moved me terribly in Levi is, you remember, I don't know if it's at the end of If This Is a Man, or at the beginning of the next one, Truth, the Russian after liberation book, where he reports on this horrible dream he had, that while in the concentration camp, he dreamt that it's after the war, he is fed with his family and telling them the story, and then people start to yawn, yeah, okay, go to sleep, and this terrifies him so much that he awakens, as if in a repetition to that Freudian father, can't you see that I'm burning? And this, maybe this will interest you, reminded me of another trauma, friends who dealt with raped women in Bosnia in post-Yugoslav war, told me exactly the same story, that the most terrific moment where most of the suicides of the raped women occurred was not immediately after the act, but was after, when they survived, when they discovered that there is no witness, even okay, or family disowned them, that death, not finding an addressee, that was the true horror. Okay, I have here many other points, but I withdraw my intervention still later, maybe.
Well, thank you. Those are very useful, and I did know the information about Eichmann from other sources. And
but again, in no way I say, look what the truth is. This is for me something that says about the hypocrisy of Europe.
Well,
I would have done the same, wouldn't you?
Look.
As a Jew.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of a Jewish friend said to me the other day when we were watching the destruction of Lebanon. She said, how can Jews do this? And I just said, well, I think Jews are probably no better or no worse than anybody else. So, it strikes me as not particularly remarkable in that way. What I do think is interesting is how we might account for something like belated suicide, and Levy's very, very strange about this. When he talks about the suicides, he puts it in parentheses in the Drama of the Subject, and he talks of, and it's a very Kafkan moment, right? Relating about how people were imprisoned and transported and assumed by virtue of the imprisonment that there must be guilt. Knowing that there was no guilt, they assumed there must be guilt, and how that guilt was in some sense satisfied through the punishments of the camp itself, but when the punishments of the camp cease, the guilt becomes about having survived when another did not. And it's this last moment that's very hard for me to understand, but I think it has to be understood somehow. That the idea that one survived and another did not, for Charlotte Delvaux, she understands that as an extremely sorrowful accident, but I don't discern guilt in her about that. She doesn't understand herself as the cause of the other's death. But how cause can get set up, I'm sure you have a Lacanian explanation for this.
I think this is, you provided now a good answer to yesterday's Wolfgang's question. This obscene instance that makes you guilty,
yes.
Even if you know, this is superego at its purest. This is the obscenity of the superego.
Yeah. Well, and as we know, for the superego unleashed without any mitigating pleasure, canon does lead to suicide. But it is an extraordinary kind of guilt. It makes me wonder whether the absence of the addressee, I'm wondering if the other is lost and so incorporated precisely in that superegoic structure. We might understand it as the vanishing of the other, or the incorporation of the other into a kind of instrumentality of superegoic violence. So, I would have to think a little bit about the absence of the witness in light of what Levy has written.